On the edge of sleep, or in the silent meditation before battle, it begins. Not a sound, but a feeling, a resonance in the blood, a memory that is not one's own, rising like a tide of black oil. For a warrior of the Ninth Legion, the battle is never truly won. The alien is slain, the heretic burned, the fortress taken, but the true enemy is never vanquished. It waits within the double helix of his own being, a ghost in the machine of demigod flesh. It is a thirst for blood that is a pale shadow of the greater darkness to come. It is the echo of a scream that has not faded in 10,000 years. This is the secret agony of the sons of Sanguinius, the beautiful and the damned. The blood angels are dying, not in battle, not from the attrition of endless war, but from the inside. And it began the moment their father fell. To understand this curse, one must first understand the lie upon which the Ninth Legion was built. In the glorious dawn of the Great Crusade, they were the perfect weapon clad in the raiment of angels. Their Primarch, Sanguinius, was the great angel, a being of such impossible grace and martial perfection that even his brothers, demigods all, looked upon him with awe. He was the emperor's most beloved son, the herald of a golden age, and his legion reflected his glory. They were artisans and warriors, poets and destroyers, their every action a work of art, their every battle a masterpiece of controlled violence. They were held up as the ideal to which all other legions should aspire, the shining example of what humanity could become. Yet, it was a lie. A beautiful, necessary lie, maintained at a terrible cost. From their very inception, the warriors of the Ninth carried a flaw in their gene seed, a defect that manifested as an unnerving, feral thirst for the blood of their enemies. In the heat of battle, the veneer of civilization could crack, and the angelic host could descend into a frenzy of savage butchery, their thirst sated only by draining the life from their foes. This was the red thirst. In the early days, it was a secret shame, managed and concealed. Sanguinius himself bore its weight most heavily. He, the most perfect of the Primarchs, carried the most grotesque of imperfections. He walked in the light, but a shadow clung to his soul. The few surviving records from that era are veiled and allegorical, speaking of a hidden hunger or the flaw in the blood. But the truth was far more visceral. It was a form of genetic vampirism, a regression to a primal state that horrified the Legion's leadership. They developed rituals of bloodletting and meditative states to control the urges, encasing the beast in a cage of ceremony and discipline. They became masters of the arts, sculpting and painting, composing verse and music not merely for culture, but as a form of spiritual therapy, a way to assert the nobility of the mind over the depravity of the flesh. They fought with a desperate ferocity, as if trying to outrun the darkness within them. Each victory was a temporary reprieve, each act of noble sacrifice a penance for the sins they feared they would one day commit. The galaxy saw angels. Only they knew the monster that beat its wings against the inside of their ribs. Sanguinius believed it was his personal failing, a stain upon his honor, that he must one day present to his father, the emperor, for judgment, and he prayed for absolution. But the Great Crusade offered no time for such confessions. There were always more worlds to bring into compliance, more battles to be won. And so the secret was kept. The Ninth Legion became a paradox, the most celebrated and the most compromised. Their outward glory a direct measure of their inner torment. This constant grinding tension, the struggle between the angel and the beast, forged them into warriors of unparalleled resolve. They understood the fragility of civilization because they saw it fraying within themselves every single day. They fought for the imperial truth with the fervor of true believers, because they needed to believe in something pure to counteract the impurity in their own veins. The red thirst was their shame, but it was also their strength. It was a fire that could be channeled, a source of terrifying aggression that, when controlled, made them unstoppable. But fire, by its nature, desires only to consume. And for 10,000 years, it has been consuming them, one soul at a time. This was the state of things when the galaxy burned. The Horus heresy was not merely a civil war. For the Blood Angels, it was a spiritual apocalypse. It was the moment their carefully constructed reality shattered. Their curse, which they had always feared, was suddenly dwarfed by a betrayal that ripped the heavens asunder. When Horus Lupercal, the Emperor's most trusted son and Sanguinius's closest brother, declared his rebellion, it was an act of cosmic treason that defied all comprehension. For the angel, it was a personal wound. He had seen visions of his own death at Horus's hands, a fate he accepted with a grace that was both heartbreaking and absolute. He knew he was flying to Terra to die. He knew that his sacrifice was necessary to expose the depth of Horus's corruption and to buy the Emperor the single moment he would need to strike the final blow. And so, at the siege of Terra, the Ninth Legion was sublime. They held the Eternity Gate against impossible odds, their red armor a beacon of defiance in a world drowning in darkness. They were dying in their thousands, but they did not break. Here, at the very end of all things, their inner struggle gave them a strength that no other legion could match. They had been fighting a war within themselves for centuries. The war outside was simply a reflection of that same conflict. Sanguinius himself was a figure of mythic radiance, his white wings a stark contrast to the blood and smoke that choked the sky. He slew demons by the score, his sorrow as potent a weapon as his spear. But his destiny lay not on the battlements, but aboard the vengeful spirit, the flagship of the arch-traitor. He faced Horus alone, a final desperate plea between brothers. It was a plea that was met with a rage that had been fed by the darkest powers of the warp. Sanguinius was slain, not merely killed, but utterly destroyed, his body broken and his spirit savaged. In that instant, as the angel's life was extinguished, a psychic shockwave of unimaginable agony erupted from his soul. It was the death cry of a demigod, a cataclysm of grief, betrayal, and pain that tore through the fabric of reality. And it struck every single one of his sons, on the walls of the palace, in the skies above, in the tunnels below. Every blood angel felt their father die. They did not hear of it, they experienced it. His final moments became their own. They felt the rending of his flesh, the shattering of his bones, the crushing weight of his brother's betrayal. They saw through his eyes the sneering face of Horus, bloated with chaotic power. They felt his despair, his final defiant surge of will, and then nothing. An abyss. An absence where a son had been. This psychic trauma, this shared memory of archetypal agony, imprinted itself upon their very gene seed. It was a wound far deeper and more terrible than the red thirst. This was the birth of the Black Rage. In the immediate aftermath, the Legion was broken. Their father was dead. The Emperor was interred upon the Golden Throne. And a terrible madness had begun to claim their warriors. Brothers who had stood firm against legions of traitors now fell to their knees, screaming, their eyes seeing not the present but the past. They saw the blood-soaked deck of the vengeful spirit. They saw the arch-traitor. They believed they were Sanguinius, living out his final doomed moments. This was the Black Rage, and it was a curse of memory. Where the red thirst was a hunger of the flesh, the rage was a poison of the soul. A warrior who succumbed to it was lost forever, his consciousness submerged beneath the overwhelming persona of his dying Primarch. He was no longer a space marine, he was a vessel for a ghost, a living embodiment of a 10,000-year-old murder. In the centuries that followed the heresy, the Legion fractured, reforming as the Blood Angels chapter and its many successors. But the twin curses went with them. The red thirst remained. A constant low-level threat, a bestial urge that had to be contained through ritual and willpower. But the black rage was the true horror. It was unpredictable, striking without warning. A hero of 100 campaigns could be lost in a moment, his mind consumed by the past. The chapter was forced to create a new formation, one spoken of only in whispers, the Death Company. Warriors who fall to the black rage are taken from their squads, their red armor painted black marked only with the red saltires of their martyrdom. They are a brotherhood of the lost, unleashed upon the enemy as a wave of unstoppable, inconsolable fury. They do not fight for victory or for honor. They fight because they believe they are on the walls of the imperial palace at the end of the world, making a final stand against the ultimate traitor. They charge into the guns of the enemy, seeking not to win, but to die a meaningful death, to find the peace that their Primarch was denied. To watch the Death Company fall upon an enemy is to witness both glory and tragedy in its purest form. They are magnificent, faster and stronger than their brothers, their pain and rage giving them a strength that borders on the supernatural. They feel no fear, only the all-consuming grief and fury of their father. They scream his name. They cry out, Horus's, their bolt pistols and chains wards reaping a terrible tally. But it is a hollow spectacle. Each member of the Death Company is a failure of the chapter, a brother who could not be saved. Their charge is a funeral procession, their battle cry a lament. And after the battle, if any survive, they are granted the Emperor's peace by the chapter's chaplains, a merciful end to an existence of pure agony. The existence of the Death Company is the chapter's open secret, the physical manifestation of their damnation. It is a constant reminder that no matter how many victories they win, they are always one moment of weakness away from utter oblivion. The number of those who fall to the rage has never lessened. Across 10 millennia, it has only grown, a tide of black despair that threatens to one day drown the chapter entirely. The twin curses define the soul of every son of Sanguinius. They live in a state of perpetual, elegant sorrow. The red thirst is the constant temptation to abandon their humanity, to become the monster their enemies believe them to be. It whispers to them in the heat of battle, promising power at the cost of their soul. They must master it every day, holding it at bay with iron discipline and ancient rites. Many successor chapters have failed this test. The Knights of Blood fell completely, becoming a renegade warband of blood-crazed killers. The flesh tearers walk a razor's edge, their savagery barely contained. Their chapter master, Gabriel Seth, a study in controlled fury. He sees the thirst not as a flaw to be overcome, but as a weapon to be aimed. A philosophy that horrifies the more noble blood angels, but perhaps represents a more honest engagement with their nature. For the flesh tearers, the angel is already dead. Only the beast remains. And its only purpose is to kill the enemies of the Imperium before it consumes itself. The black rage, however, is the existential threat. It is the promise of a meaningless end, a descent into a madness from which there is no return. A blood angel does not fear death in battle. He fears the loss of self. He fears becoming another black-armored ghost, his identity erased, his life reduced to a mere echo of his father's death. This fear informs their every action. It is why they pursue perfection with such obsessive dedication. Their art, their sculptures, their meticulously crafted armor, these are not acts of vanity. They are acts of defiance. They are an assertion of identity against the encroaching tide of oblivion. Each perfectly rendered poem, each flawlessly executed maneuver is a declaration: I am still here, I am not him, I am myself. They are haunted by the ghost of the greatest of them all, and they spend their lives trying to escape his shadow, even as they revere his memory. This is the central paradox of their existence. They must worship the Father whose death is killing them. And so they carry on, a brotherhood defined by a shared, incurable disease. Their apothecaries are not merely healers, they are geneticists and spiritual guardians, constantly searching for a cure that has eluded them for 10,000 years. They study the gene seed of their fallen. They pore over ancient texts. They pray for a miracle. Their sanguinary priests bear the red grail, a chalice containing the blood of Sanguinius himself, from which new initiates must drink. It is a sacrament that connects them to their Primarch, but also the very vessel that transmits the curse through the generations. Their librarians plumb the depths of the warp, seeking answers in that treacherous realm, risking their own sanity to save their brothers. The struggle is all-encompassing, a war fought on the spiritual and genetic level, even as they prosecute the Emperor's wars across the galaxy. Every blood angel is a soldier fighting on two fronts, one against the horrors of the galaxy, the other against the horror in his own blood. No figure embodies this eternal struggle more than Commander Dante. He is the chapter master of the Blood Angels, lord of the angelic host, and the oldest living space marine in the Imperium, who is not bound to the sarcophagus of a dreadnought. He has lived for more than 1,500 years, a span of time so vast it is nearly incomprehensible. He fought when the Imperium was younger, when the memory of the heresy was not yet ancient myth. He has seen worlds born and die, has commanded legions in crusades that are now footnotes in forgotten histories. And for every single day of his impossibly long life, he has felt the pull of the Flaw. He has watched generations of his brothers, his sons, fall to the thirst or the rage. He has personally signed the death warrants of thousands, condemning them to the death company. The weariness in him is a tangible thing, a weight that would have crushed a lesser soul centuries ago. His face, usually hidden by the golden death mask of his office, is described as a parchment of ancient sorrow. Dante is the ultimate expression of the Blood Angels' endurance. He is their anchor, their living saint. Yet he himself longs for death. He has confessed in his private meditations that he prays for an end, for a final battle where he can meet his fate and rest. But he cannot. His duty is to his chapter, to his father's memory. He is the guardian of their hope, and so he must endure his own despair. In him, the tragedy of the Blood Angels is writ large. He is the most powerful, the most respected, the most glorious of their number, and he is also the most tired. His continued existence is both a triumph of will and a sentence of unending suffering. He has felt the black rage brush against his mind countless times, and each time he has forced it back through sheer, unimaginable willpower. But he knows that one day he will fail. One day, the ghost of his father will claim him too. His greatest fear is not that he will die, but that he will live long enough to become that which he has fought against for over a millennium. If Dante represents the grim endurance of the chapter, then Chief Librarian Mephiston represents a terrifying alternative. Once known as Brother Calistarius, he was a captain of the Blood Angels, who, during the Second War for Armageddon, succumbed entirely to the Black Rage. He was lost, interred with the Death Company, and hurled into the heart of the enemy. He should have died, a raging, mindless berserker, but he did not. buried for days under the rubble of a collapsed hive spire. Trapped in the living nightmare of his Primarch's death, something unprecedented happened. Calistarius fought back. In the depths of that psychic abyss, he battled the Black Rage, and he won. He emerged from the rubble not as Calistarius, and not as the ghost of Sanguinius, but as something new. He had defeated the rage, but the effort had transformed him. His physical power had magnified to an incredible degree, his psychic might now rivaling the most powerful psychers in the galaxy. He had become Mephiston, the Lord of Death. Mephiston is a figure of awe and fear within the chapter. He is the only blood angel in history to have conquered the Black Rage. He should be a symbol of ultimate hope, proof that the curse can be broken. But he is not. The price of his victory was a part of his soul. The warmth and camaraderie that define the blood angels are gone from him, replaced by an icy calm and a chilling intensity. He is unnaturally pale, his eyes glowing with a cold light. His brothers respect his power, but they do not trust him. They look at him and they see not a cure, but a different kind of damnation. He did not banish the darkness within. He mastered it, absorbed it, and made it his own. The question that haunts the upper echelons of the chapter is a stark one. Is the path of Mephiston the future of the blood angels? To save themselves from the Flaw, must they sacrifice the very nobility and compassion that makes them who they are? Mephiston is the living embodiment of this terrible choice. He is salvation and he is damnation, wrapped in a single terrifying package. He walks a solitary path, forever separate from his brothers, his victory having isolated him more completely than any defeat ever could. And now, as the 41st millennium draws to its dark close, the plight of the blood angels has become more desperate than ever. The galaxy has been torn in two by the Great Rift, a wound in reality that bleeds demons and madness. The light of the Astronomicon is gone from half the Imperium, and Baal, the irradiated homeworld of the blood angels and their successors, was besieged by the full might of Hive Fleet Leviathan. The sons of Sanguinius gathered to defend their ancestral home in a war that dwarfed all others in their history. They fought with the desperation of a species on the verge of extinction. They sold their lives by the thousand, holding back a tide of biological horrors that threatened to consume everything. The Death Company swelled to unprecedented numbers. A black tide of enraged martyrs hurled against an ocean of alien flesh. They were on the brink of annihilation, their final stand a glorious, hopeless gesture against the dying of the light. It was then that salvation arrived, in the form of the Indomitus Crusade, led by the returned Primarch, Robout Guilliman. With them came a new breed of warrior, the Primaris Space Marines. Larger, stronger, and forged with rediscovered Adeptus Mechanicus secrets, they were heralded as the future of the Adeptus Astartes. Crucially, it was believed that their reworked gene seed might be free of the flaws that had plagued their predecessors for so long. For the Blood Angels, this was a hope beyond prayer. A new generation of warriors, immune to the thirst and the rage. A chance to finally heal their broken lineage. Thousands of these new Primaries warriors were created for the Blood Angels and their successors, their ranks replenished after the devastating losses on Baal. For a brief, shining moment, it seemed as if a new dawn was breaking for the sons of Sanguinius. The hope was short-lived. It was a lie. The Primaris Marines were not immune. The Flaw was not a mere genetic error that could be written out of a sequence. It was something deeper, something woven into the very soul of the Legion. It was not long before the first Primaris Blood Angel felt the telltale hunger of the red thirst. And then the ultimate horror. One of the new generation, a perfect warrior of the new age, fell screaming into the abyss of the black rage, his eyes seeing a battle 10,000 years gone. The curse was not gone. It had merely been sleeping, and in some reports, it seems to have returned with even greater virulence, as if the new, more stable gene seed provides a richer soil for the ancient sickness to grow. The hope that had burned so brightly was extinguished, replaced by a despair deeper than any they had known before. They had been given the gift of resurrection, only to find they were still bound to the same corpse. And so it has been, across all the long centuries, and so it is now, as darkness closes on the Imperium. The Blood Angels stand as they always have, as guardians of humanity, as exemplars of the imperial ideal. They are a vision of angelic wrath on the battlefield, their red and gold armor a promise of retribution. They are artists and statesmen, their culture a flickering candle of beauty in an age of unending brutality. But they are a dying race. Their numbers are greater now than they have been in millennia, yet the proportion of those lost to the Flaw continues to rise. The Death Company is a permanent, growing feature of their order of battle. The red thirst claws at the edges of their discipline, threatening to pull them down into the same abyss as their lost cousins. This is the burden they carry. They fight for a future they may not live to see, protecting a humanity that would be horrified by the truth of their nature. They are a monument to a perfect Father, and they are being consumed by the agony of his death. Every victory is tainted by the knowledge that the true war is internal and can never be won. It can only be fought every day until the last blood angel falls, not to an alien claw or a heretic's blade, but to the memory of a single moment of betrayal that happened 10,000 years ago. In the end, what remains is the vigil. They watch the stars, they stand on the walls, they guard the gates of the Imperium, but they also watch themselves and each other, waiting for the flicker behind the eyes, the taste of ash, the first echoes of a ghost's scream. For the sons of the angel, the war will never be over. The enemy is in their blood,